Hi, Scott Orlin with CINEMA-Magazin. One of the films that I got to experience at the Sundance Film Festival is called Wild Indian, and I'm here with the creator of that movie, Lyle Corbine Jr. So thank you for joining us. You know, what's really fascinating is that not only was this your first feature to premiere at Sundance, but it kind of had its origins at the Sundance Lab. So you got to nurture yourself through the system. Talk about how important that was.
Oh, it was instrumental. I think I was fostered through the process by people at the top of their game, some of the best writers and directors working right now, and some of them are still my mentors to this day. And I couldn't ask for a better kind of structure to have kind of made my first feature. It wasn't quite hand holding, but it was people coming in and people like David Lowery, Ken Kwapis, Joan Tewksbury, Leslie Lincoln Collider, Barry Jenkins, Robert Redford, like all those people just gave you your thoughts and guidance, and a lot of them have stayed in touch.
Well, I want to break down the movie because let's face it, kind of since the advent of cinema, it's predominantly been produced or directed and created by white men. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see this expanse where other cultures, other genders, other sexualities are kind of getting their hands in the mix to tell their stories. So how important was this to tell a Native American story from a Native American point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a singular person, so I started writing this by myself without any mind of like how it would sit out in the world. It was just, I almost approached it like I was writing a novel, I guess, because it wasn't like, I wasn't anybody when I started writing it, or I wasn't in a place where I could get $1 million movie, even think of getting something like that financed. But it was one of those things that, by the way, can I start over? Is this something that we can start over on? I screwed up. Okay.
No. Just remember, this is just us having a conversation.
Right.
So,
of course. Right. Sure. So yeah. So it was something that I would need a few. I kind of started. I was in a place where I was writing and directing like little $2,000 films, and I wasn't in a place where I could, even start to think at a much larger level. So it was just one of those things where I was just writing a story. I was writing a story about me and my family, and gradually it became more and more of I suppose, an allegory as I got further into the film.
I don't want to give too much away. I'm always careful to navigate questions, but there is a childhood trauma, and we see how it affects these kids in this community. How much of this were things that you have experienced or you have seen that you wanted to explore, or how much was it just a kind of a product of your imagination?
Yeah, it's all it's all imagined. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like a meticulous writer in the sense that I'm almost like directing the movie as I'm writing it, if that makes sense. It's kind of like I'm like, it's why it kind of takes me a bit to get through really personal stuff. I can structure things really fast and I can get drafts out really fast, but when I'm like writing something personal like this, it's one of those things where it takes a while, because it's like I'm very exact with how I wanted to, I was very exact with how I wanted to portray the people in the movie.
Because it's really fascinating. We meet these two young friends and we kind of form opinions about who we think each one of them are. And then as the movie kind of progresses, it juxtaposes. They kind of change a little bit. And we're kind of confused at some point, well, who's the good one? Who's the bad one? And we're never sure as the movie goes on. You constantly keep us on edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's those general film rules. You know, I spent a lot of time studying film, and it's and how it works. And I think, you know, you put a, like, you know, the Hitchcock thing. You put a bomb under the table, and a regular conversation turns into like a very tense scene. And it was that way with the script. You know, it was initially just a story about two cousins who grew up differently, and you know, once they you know, connected, or you know, once they reconnected after a few years, it was about kind of how they, I guess, reconciled being, I guess, different, I guess. But that wasn't very compelling, so I thought, you know, what if they had this like terrible secret between them, and it started to become a much more tense thing, and I started to see the parallels between like guilt and shame and trauma and all those things.
Because it was fascinating as the plot thickens. I kept wondering, can we wash away our sins? Can we ever get rid of them? Or are they going to haunt us for the rest of our lives?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the question that the film doesn't try to answer, but it's just a question that it explores.
I want to ask you too about casting, because obviously there are a lot of great actors who don't get a myriad of opportunities. How easy was it to access some of the lead characters that you had in this?
The lead characters.
Yes.
You know, Michael and Chaske, the leads of the film, are, you know, they innately understood the story that I was trying to tell, and they understood the world that I was trying to portray. So it wasn't difficult at all. It was a relief for them, because they don't often get to explore the worlds that they were brought up in.
And I think one of the most fascinating components of this movie is you shot it in 17 days. How much did that teach you about expediency? Because, you know, you hear some filmmakers who have 140 days to make a movie, and, you know, just, is time your friend or your enemy?
In this case, I mean, it was what it was. You know, obviously I could probably still be shooting the movie. I started shooting the movie October 20 or November 2019. I could still be figuring out ways to shoot things differently. But, you know, part of what the process brings out when you're tied to like a really strict timeline like that is a lot of creativity, and a lot of different ways to go about telling your story.
And just a last question for you, Lyle. What kind of conversation do you hope audiences have when they leave the theater?
What kind of questions?
What kind of conversations do you hope?
Oh, conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of Native people come out of it understanding what that was, and they feel a sense of, I don't know. I've gotten a lot of, you know, texts and emails over the past few days about, you know, how they connected with the story, and how they, you know, Ojibwe people and Native people, like, just, you know, innately understood what I was doing, and really appreciated it. But I don't know what the conversations would be like. I know the reviews are really great, and the reviews and the questions that they bring up in those reviews are very very fun to read about.
Well, congratulations on Sundance, and hopefully this is just the beginning of many, many more films you get to do. Lyle, thank you so much. This is Scott.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.